Hey folks, my name's Ned Pyle. Thanks for joining us here in Windows Server Summit for 2019. And today I'm going to talk to you about the really big elephant in the room, and that is Windows Server 2008. Everybody here probably has run 2008, probably has 2008 still. I know from talking to customers, from telemetry, from surveys that it's about maybe half of all servers left in the world of Windows, and that is tens upon tens of millions of servers are 2008. And that means for you that we need to have some options for getting you modern. Because on January 14th, it's all over for 2008. So about 8 months from now, as I talk to you here, we will no longer support this operating system, and you will need to have done something about it. You really have two major options right now. You can either take those 2008 servers and move them to Azure and get a few extra years of support, Azure IaaS. And we have really great details and information on how you can do that at our server webpage, which we will hopefully be showing below me right now as a URL for you to follow. But there's one other option. And that's an option that I've been working on for the last few years and bringing to you starting in 2019, which is Server 2019 Storage Migration Service. Now, why did I make the migration service? Migrations are very complex. Files can be in use. File ownership can be set. You have encrypted files, permissions. This list goes on and on and on. And it makes it really tricky for you to get away with migrating off of a box. It's not something you can simply just copy some files and be done. You need all of that metadata, that configuration, those network settings, that security, all that fidelity in order to truly get your migration done in a healthy way so that your users and apps are not affected and then nobody's shouting at you on Monday morning. So, Storage Migration Service is here to save the day. This is the Storage Migration Service. It's a dashboard running in Windows Admin Center. I'm sure you're very familiar with Windows Admin Center by now. It's been around for about a year, and it is our modern way of running both existing old-fashioned workloads and pieces of Windows, but also new features and pieces like SMS. This is the dashboard showing me doing a couple of migrations right now in line, pushing my way through getting off of some 2008 servers. And today I'm going to go real demo heavy here, slide light, and show you what I mean when I talk about a storage migration service really saving your bacon. What is the vision of SMS? The vision is we migrate your data from anywhere. I don't care if they are physical machines. I don't care if they are virtual machines. I don't care if they're in VMware or in Hyper-V or wherever. And we will take them and put them onto brand new Windows servers, later OSs, especially like 2019, running wherever you like. So if they were physical, they can become virtual. If they were virtual on-prem, they can become IaaS in Azure. It's up to you. I'm caring about from the server piece to the server piece, and wherever you want to run those is fine by me. It's super fast, it's very consistent, it's very scalable. It's designed, you saw in that quick little dashboard demo I was showing, that I was running a couple of server migrations simultaneously. It takes care of all the complexity, and you saw my first piece there, that cloud of complex items. It knows about all those things, it takes care of all those things. And it's really nice, elegant graphical workflow. Windows Admin Center gives us the ability to wrap up all of our PowerShell in a really nice, wizardly type option to make sure you go through things step by step, you don't miss steps, and you're not basically following documentation and running commands forever and ever, but instead getting a nice visual, graphical representation. So, what are we doing right now with 2019? You've maybe seen SMS already. I've talked about it at Ignite. I've demoed it at Ignite. Obviously 2019 came out later last year and then really sort of hit its stride this year. What do we do right now? Well, we take 2003, 2008, 2012, whatever your source operating system is with SMB on it, and By placing this orchestrator service in the middle, we can take your data and your configuration and migrate it over to modern targets. So for example, a 2019 box running Azure File Sync, or some servers running on Hyper-V, or maybe a brand new physical server. And then from those, we can take those pieces up into Azure itself and either push that data through Azure Files, use Azure File Sync, or directly copy these into ISVMs using, say, Azure Migrate, and you're rocking and rolling with a public cloud implementation of your file server at that point. And we're just living in the middle there as a free, piece of Server 2019. This thing doesn't come separately. It's not an extra charge. As long as you have a 2019 server somewhere, you have SMS. So how does this thing work? It operates in three basic phases. The first one is inventory, the second one is transfer, and the last one is cutover. And I'm gonna, rather than bombarding you with too many more slides here, I'm gonna have just one little piece on each of these and then just ride right into some demos and show you what I mean. So let's start with inventory. Inventory is totally passive. There's no agent. You don't install anything on source machines. You don't worry about, having to roll out a service somewhere else. You're just putting SMS on your orchestrator, and it's going to reach out and look at whatever servers you decide you are thinking about migrating. So they run from that orchestrator, and we create a job. Jobs contain one or more servers. I name that job. I figure out who's going to be the migration account for it, who's going to be a good administrator account that has access to those source machines. It's going to go through, and we're going to point to which shares we want to look at. It is going to scan the configuration, look at the network, look at the volumes, look at the operating system info, make sure that what we're looking at is going to work, that it's supported, and then fill up our database in the orchestrator with lots of knowledge about what's going to happen. Then it's going to scan SMB, look at all the shares on there, look at the counts of the files, look at the sizes, look at the share properties, get all of that stuff into our database as well. We talk about all the small little pieces that go into a migration. There are these little knobs and hooks and idiosyncrasies that have been set on servers, and the older they are, probably the less likely you are to be aware of them, right? I said I support 2003. I see about 7 to 8% of our migrations through my telemetry are still 2003 sources. Even though that OS has not been supported for many years, there's plenty of them still out there. And the odds are that whatever configuration's been put on that box and tinkered around with since for the last 12, 13, 14, 15 years, you may not even be aware of it. And SMS's job is to go through and find all those little nooks and crannies and make sure that they get copied over to your destination server so that your apps don't break and your users aren't affected. So this inventory is going to go through and run, and we are ready to go ahead at the end of it and do a transfer. Let's take a look at what a inventory is going to look like. So here's my WAC dashboard. You hopefully are familiar with it by now. And the first thing I'm going to do is connect to my orchestrator server, and if the SMS service isn't installed, we'll go ahead and install it for you. So we've tried to make this as a seamless and easy a process as we possibly can and really leverage WAC. Here's my dashboard you saw before. Of course, it's empty right now. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in a job name and go ahead and hit yes to go. And we're going to start putting together our first inventory. So I need to give some administrative credentials to the source machines that I plan on connecting to. And I need to give it a password, obviously. And then I can decide, well, do I want to copy the entire volumes or I just want to copy some shares? In this case, I'm just going to copy some shares. Now I need to provide some source machines. So I'm putting in these 2 file servers. And once these things are plugged in, I will kick off my inventory. So first I type in these 2 file servers. That's my list. I could do 1, I could do 10. We've actually tested up to 100 at one time. Hopefully you've got a nice beefy server for running something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and start my inventory. And it's going to read those machines. Remember my phases I was talking about before? It's going through and looking at SMB, looking at the configuration, and noting it all down in these details. So I can see, the source operating system. I could see free disk space. I could see, how many shares are configured, what's going on with those shares. I can look at the details of shares. All these little weird nooks and hooks that people have been messing around with for years and maybe have just lost track of in your endless IT pro technical debt, right? And these are real servers here. So I have a couple of machines. I have a 2012 and a 2016 machine here I'm just poking around with. And you can see those shares really do exist. I was using the old Share Explorer tool there, and they really do have files in them. In this case, they are many, many files of my dogs. And we're going to migrate all of my dogs over to a brand new server. So as I go through here and look at this, I've got my inventory pieces all done, and I'm ready to go. So the next phase for us is transfer, and this is really the meat phase of the operation, right? So I'm going to copy all the data. I'm going to copy all of the security. I'm going to copy all of the shares themselves. And before, if you were doing a migration, I mean, anybody can run robocopy relatively safely and get that data, right? But things like share configurations and share security, or the security itself on files, is much trickier to get copied over. And so SMS does, as well as robocopy does, but then it does much more. I mean, it is multi-threaded, it's doing multiple servers, it has retry options, it does multiple passes, it will do delta copies. So if I run a transfer once, I get everything. If I run it again, I get what changed. If I find things already existing on the destination, I will back them up for you on the very first pass in case somebody, accidentally picked the wrong server. We don't want to overwrite data. In case somebody accidentally was using the destination server, which isn't quite ready yet, we don't want to overwrite data. So I'm going to map the destinations, my source machine and my destination machine. I'm going to map the volumes. I'm going to decide if I want all these shares or not. Maybe I'll skip some, skip others. Maybe there's one server in my big batch I decided not to do today, and I might just opt out of it for now and come back and run a job on it later. I can set my retry flags, my preservation rules. I can decide if I want to use checksums or not. We have 2 levels of checksumming in SMS. One's very fast and lightweight. One's much slower, but incredibly accurate in case you're very, very paranoid. Then we can validate this is going to work. My absolute favorite piece of SMS is that we go through and validate steps rather than making you go read what you're supposed to be doing. So we then do the transfer, we do the delta rerun, we make a report for you, and then we're moving on to cutover. So let's see this now. So I'm here, ready to get into my transfer again. This is where we just left off. I'm going to need another new set of credentials for the destination machine. I'm not entirely sure if the same administrator account works as well on the destination as it did on the source. It might be the same user, it might not. And then I'm going to fire up, lining up each of these servers that I've migrated previously, looking at from the inventory. So I need to give the source machine a new destination in order to get migrated, right? So I had the FS servers. I'm going to type in my new destination server. I'm going to scan it, and that's going to get me all of the storage on that machine. So I need to line up this storage to make sure that if I'm migrating from D, there's a D there to migrate to. And if I'm migrating several drives, those drives exist. So we can line it all up and that there's no loss of fidelity for users and data once this migration is done. I can choose not to migrate a server like I mentioned before, but I really do want to migrate servers. Otherwise, this would be a really boring demo. So I'm going to add my second box. And as I go through that, this one's got a few more drives. Make sure those look good. I could decide I don't like this share, I do like this share. You make all your choices here. Then I can do various amounts of settings for whether or not I want to do more complex checksumming, if I want to retry in-use files or not. I have the option, a little sneak peek here for things that are just coming out. The ability to copy local security and principles, something that nobody else can do inside of Robocopy or the tools, and keep old security working from local users and groups on a new machine. That was never possible. And then I'm going to just about get into the meaty part. I'm going to run my validate. This is going to reach out to the destination machine and make sure that it's ready to go, that firewall rules are ready, that the privileges are right, that I've installed the proxy service, which will make performance much, much faster on 2019 destinations than it would on, say, a 2016 destination, and then ready to go. So I'm going to start my transfer up and let it start running here right now. Oh, you notice these little banners we have popping out? They remind you things like, we have Azure File Sync and other hybrid services to attach right at the end. And it might seem like an advertisement, but actually really it's just a good idea. believe me. So now I'm going to start my transfer, and we're going to get this thing rolling along, and you can see that there'll start being some progress coming along. I'm going to time compress this because who's got time to sit there and wait 15 minutes for all of my dog files to copy over between machines? And then when that's all done, both my servers have finished their transfers, and we can actually go through and look at some of those details on there about what happened. So I can see which shares copied, which files copied. And I have a really interesting set of ability to look through also at a detailed output file. So we have a database, like I said, and if you want to go look at event logs of all the operations, you are free to. But I am more of an Excel guy myself. So we give you the option to save a report of your entire transfer into CSV, which you can pop open in Excel, organize whichever way you want, look at all the data, look at any errors for any files that got skipped, see exactly why it got skipped. Keep an audit trail for yourself and your own peace of mind, so when your migration's done and somebody says, oh, you didn't copy my files, you can say, I totally copied your files, you deleted them later, you owe me lunch. Okay, so that's transfer. Nice and easy, right? All those steps you might have done previously in migrations, we've just sort of pushed out of the way and taken care of for you. Let's talk about the last piece, cutover. This is the super novel part of SMS. In the past, I mean, you could inventory things yourself, right? I mean, you can look at those machines and write down how their config is and look at their space use and, make yourself a reasonable understanding of what SMS is doing. And you could probably transfer files at least, maybe not all of the security and pieces that we do, but pretty reasonable approximation by hand. But the cutover piece is really kind of a pain in the neck. What we want to be able to do is take that old source machine and make it no longer be reachable by users, but still reachable by admins. We want you to still be able to get to it, but your users and apps not to. We want them to go to that brand new server, which is filled with brand new data, and as far as they can tell, looks like that old server they've been used to using for years or decades. So we will take over its name, we'll take over its Active Directory identity, we will take over its network, all of that old source machine, and it will be like nothing ever happened. Any user that was in the middle of working when you started this cutover would notice this small brownout period where they couldn't reach the server, which would then sort of magically resolve itself, hopefully before they came and bothered you. And all their data would be there, and the server name wouldn't have changed, and their IP address wouldn't have changed. And they'll sort of scratch their head and say, I don't know, computers, and get back to work. So what we're doing is we are actually mapping the network, setting IP addresses, setting a new name, setting things like alternate computer names and other subtle name resolution and security options that come with Windows. We're setting a max duration for how long this cutover can take. We're going to validate again. Validation is my favorite part of SMS to make sure that we think it's about to work. So you can read the documents and make sure you're following the requirements, and then validate will check your homework to make sure that you're really ready to go. We will start that cutover. It will run. And that will be it. The job will be done. Our old server will be obfuscated, re-IP'd, and accessible by you, but no longer accessible by any user or application that was trying to reach that server by any of its entry points at all. Anybody trying to use any of those old entry points will end up on the new server, which is a brand new machine, brand new OS, no cruft from the old server whatsoever, other than just keeping data and network and security. No operating system, no in-place upgrade, nothing that you would probably be missing is on that server. Okay, so here is how cutover looks. I'm in my third and final phase. My credentials are still good from last time probably. I'm probably not going to change them in this case, in this demo. And then I am ready to fire this up with network settings. I can choose to skip network settings entirely, do some network settings. This is a brand new piece. Again, I'm giving away some sneak peeks here for something which is just coming out very, very soon. But in reality, what I'm mainly doing is saying, yes, I want to migrate the networks. Let me line up the source and destination machines networks and give the chance to name the old server something, either rando name or something that I like, and decide if I want to use DHCP or a static IP address for my old server so that it can live on the network and let me get to it until I'm confident that the cutover was good. If I'm migrating to a cluster, this is new. If you're familiar with SMS, you're going to be very excited about this. We also add some extra options there for joining and setting up cluster setups of file servers. So I have all my stuff lined up. It's ready to go. I press validate again. Validate goes through and makes sure that all of those things that need to happen for cutover to work are ready to go. So once it's done examining each machine, it will give us the green light or not if things aren't. We can take a look, see the list, make sure we're happy and confident and ready to go, and we are going to fire this thing up with cutover. So as this thing runs, it's going to go pretty quickly. It really just depends on how fast your machines can reboot, how fast your DNS propagation will happen, and how quickly your AD object replication can happen. And if you're in a smaller or medium-sized environment or a low latent environment or an environment with good change notification, really the longest part of this process is the reboots. When these servers get disjoined from the domain, rejoined to the domain, we have to restart them and to change their names and identities and take over those pieces. So each server will reboot twice. And you'll see here, as I go onto my destination server, which is 2019, all my files are there. These are all the pieces that got copied over. All my shares are there, just like they were on the original machine that was years and years old. And the beauty of this piece is every last little nook and cranny has been changed, right? Look at the name hasn't changed now. I mean, as far as the user is concerned, the name hasn't changed, but that server just got renamed when we did that cutover. Its IP address got set to the old machine's IP address. Everything is there that it needed to come over from the source and nothing else. And if you look at the old source machine here, you'll actually notice that the computer has been rejoined to the domain again. But if I was to look very carefully, I can see that the server's been renamed. It's no longer going to be accessible as its old name by anybody, and anybody trying to connect to that box wouldn't be able to find it anymore, except you, the administrator. Pretty cool. And that takes all those pieces and steps out that you might not have been thinking about when you started planning your migration. So, in 2019, in October, when we released Server 2019, this was SMS's state of the world, what I just basically showed you, right? Coming really soon in 2019's first major update, which is 19H1, we will be adding in all of these new plumbed pieces that I was just talking about. So the ability to migrate from clusters, from Samba, which is all new, from Linux. The ability to push things straight into clusters, take standalone boxes and migrate them into clusters. And that networking piece allowing me to migrate straight into Azure IaaS, which obviously has a new network, right? There's no way in Azure IaaS to have your old network migrate. So those pieces I was showing earlier give you the option to say migrate everything except the networking pieces, and we'll let Azure IaaS's private and public network interfaces be the ones that are used, and that'll be the one little piece of fidelity we'll decide not to bring along with us, which is pretty nice. So, coming in 19H1, but here's the really big surprise. Coming in a cumulative update, a backport update of all of these features that I'm going to push down to regular Server 2019 through Windows Update. You'll get Samba Linux support, cluster support, local group and user migration, and networkless migration. So even though I said 19H1 and you're thinking to yourself, oh, it's the semi-annual channel releases, those core servers that come out for SA customers, it's also coming to regular Windows Server 2019, just for everybody. Because in the end, right, my goal is not to sell SMS. My goal is for you to run the latest version of Windows. So for me, the ideal situation is that you have the migration tools that you need to get off of 2008, which is my enemy. So real quick, one last little demo. here is the Samba migration. And I wanted to prove to you that we're actually doing this. You know, I'm not a terrific Linux admin myself. I had to sit there and kind of scratch my head and run my way through Linux again. Obviously, we had 2 developers set aside to work on this more carefully than me. But notice that I have the option to choose Samba right now. So I take Samba, and the difference here is there are a lot of other ways to log into Samba and Linux than there are to Windows. I mean, for a Samba server, a server emulating Windows SMB services, there's still the regular Windows login, the admin login that it's using through emulation. But there's also all of the Linux pieces that have nothing to do with that. And if I want to be able to start looking at IP addresses and storage configuration and all those things, I need to support those. And we do now. If you look at this long mamma jamma, I can put in certificates, private keys, passphrases. I can use the root accounts, whatever I need to get onto my particular distro of Linux. And there are many we support: CentOS, Fedora, RHEL, SUSE, Ubuntu, the big 5 basically. I'll be able to do that here with Storage Migration Service going forward. And you can see here, I'm doing an inventory. I'm not going to run through the entire thing again. And the cool part is the inventory. I'll be able to log in with all those credentials that are Linux related and Samba related. Take a look at the configuration. You can see here that I picked out this one server, and you can see that it's actually, even though it's looking like Windows to users, it's actually Linux, you can see here. And it has Windows shares from Samba. And I can go on with my migration just like normal after that. The experience won't change at all after that. So I go from Samba, maybe some appliance, maybe some server. I end up on server 2019. There are a lot of servers out there. Tens upon tens of millions of Windows servers out there on premises, in public clouds, wherever. And a lot of them really are old. And here's my thing. I need you in the next 8 months to take SMS, find all your 2008 servers, hunt them down, and make me proud. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. I really hope you enjoy the rest of Server Summit. My name's Ned, and have a great day.